actually really difficult to define. I bet if I asked Chris to give me a definition of culture, or Rosa to give me a definition of culture, it'd be completely two different things. So I'm not actually going to be talking about a idea or concept that has been published. I'm just going to be talking about something that I have formulated through reading a lot of different authors and journals and books in my master's program. So a little bit of background or about my idea. I'm talking about force-fed patriotism in our schools. So I believe that American schools are just teaching one culture, and they're not really expressing or celebrating all the many cultures in our classroom. As you all know, you guys all went through K through 12 to be here today, so we all went through the same kind of education, a little bit different and varying of the kind of schools that you went to. But schools themselves are a social system, so they instill values in us that they want us to learn. Like, right? They want us to learn specific things, so they teach us how to do it in schools. My credentials, I am a master's student. I'm doing a master's degree in educational foundations. So it's basically like learning about the many ways that people learn and the history behind how all that kind of started. My thesis is that I think that students should be taught different cultures in schools and given the tools that they need to choose what they want to identify with. Okay, so I'll be talking about 3 main points. 1, 2, 3. How history is created, the cultural rules of identification, and a huge flaw in the education system. So I'm going to give you a little brief history lesson, and I will try not to put you to sleep. So how history is created, I think Professor said it once in this class, we've heard it, history is told by the victors, right? Y'all can see about the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. Soak that in for a little bit. You don't really hear a lot of positive Native American things when you're talking about Pilgrims. You hear, how we were trying to be all friendly and cuddly and have Thanksgiving together, and then they started raiding through our settlements and kidnapping women and scalping the men. But you don't hear about, we gave them diseases and we were taking their land. So you hear a lot more positive Pilgrim culture than you do about Native American culture. And also in like Cowboys and Indians, who do you guys want to be when you play Cowboys and Indians? You want to be the Cowboys because they have those like fence trigger fingers and shiny guns. I mean, the Indians are a little appealing because they're sly and they're secretive, but those are 2 actually negative connotations to a person, right? So I just told you how that the victors tell our stories. I'm going to explain how that affects the way that we look at ourselves. So how we narrate ourselves is based upon our past. And when I say narrate, I'm just meaning like how you identify yourself, what you choose to identify yourself with. And the caveat about it is that you cannot make an accurate connection with your past because it's written by someone with an agenda. And by agenda, you just kind of mean if 2 people saw the same fight, you're going to tell 2 different stories. You might be on the same side of the fight, but you're going to say 2 different things, right? So if the person who wrote about the history about how dinosaurs were extinct were interested about quitting smoking, they kind of write it like this, right? How dinosaurs became extinct because they were smoking. So that's like their agenda. They want you to stop smoking. They're going to tell you that a whole species of animals were wiped out by it, right? Another way to think about it, more main culture right now, Baltimore riots, right? This is really what you're seeing. You're seeing a lot of youth, black people just trashing the place, rioting and messing everything up. What you don't see is this kind of positive culture. You see kids handing waters out to the police. You see people standing in front of armed forces to try to protect their town, right? You hear a lot of 2, this is one narrative and that's another one, right? An author, Michael Rolfe Truliot, I can't never pronounce his name, he's from the University of Chicago. He's an anthropologist and a professor. Published in the Beacon Press in 1995, that specific groups of humans must decide if a particular narrative belongs to history or to fiction, right? So if I'm part of my black culture, do I want to decide if this is true for me or if this is true for me, right? So now that I've just explained how history narrates and helps identify yourself, I'm going to explain my theory of, what is it? The cultural rule of identification. So I believe a person's never cultureless. Norma Gonzalez, she is a PhD at the University of Arizona in 2005. She wrote in an article published by Lawrence Earlbaum Associations that there's an assumption that culture provides particular rules for behavior that everyone in that culture abides by, right? And your level of participation depends on how much you identify with that culture. So you see a couple of examples here. Mexican culture, right? If you are a part of the Mexican culture, you know exactly what this is. But not all of you do it, correct? So your level of participation in that culture is the rules that you abide by. So if you are 100% immersed into the Mexican culture, you might do this on the weekends, and that might be a thing of like very big part of your life. But if you identify with that culture and you're not 100% participating in this, you're still a Mexican American student, correct? And then these are just other examples of things that I've like Googled when I said culture. Got it. And then your level of participation, it really hinges on all of this. Funny thing, I Googled American culture. This is what you get. I just thought that was really funny. Like these are literally the top things you see when you Google American culture. So now that you understand participation and your level of it, I'm going to explain to you a flaw in education really quickly. Ellen Somakawa and Elizabeth Smith from the University of Pennsylvania in 1988, published by the University of Oxford University Press, said that history has been used to mainly propagate a sense of national identity and a myth of a shared past. So think about the Pledge of Allegiance, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Now think about 80 kindergartners from different cultures standing up, putting their hand over their heart and saying that. Maybe they weren't even born here. But how perplexing is that we are asking them to pledge their allegiance to a flag that their culture was here probably way before we were. But this culture is written by a Western narrative by dominant males, and we said that they need to learn this, so we're making them learn it, right? So it's history as told by the victor. U.S. history, one whole class. World history, all of world history, another whole class, right? You see two very, very separate things. U.S. history is just up here, and the rest of world history is like right here, right? Patriotism, another thing. This is the definition. Generally speaking, cultural attachment to one's homeland or devotion to one's country, right? This is nothing about America in this definition. I Googled it, and that's what you see. Do you see anything other than U.S. flags? No, you just see all of the U.S. That's what it means to be patriotic. To be patriotic means to be a United States of American citizen, literally, pretty much. So, like I said, schools, they teach us values, and this is the values that they want us to teach. I am going to conclude this by saying I'm critical in the way that students are force-fed patriotism. And I talked about how history was created. I talked about how the cultural rules of participation and identification, and I talked about the educational flaw. I do have a solution. I just think that students should, like I said in the beginning, be taught about a lot of different cultures and just be given the tools that they need to understand that there are multiple narratives in the world, and that I hope this has really helped you guys out and giving you a different perspective. There we go.